Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Warren Doctor. Thank you for coming out to the East Tennessee History Center. I'm the President and CEO of the East Tennessee Historical Society. I'd just like to see by raise of hand, who here's a member of the East Tennessee Historical Society? If you're not, you should join. We do a lot of cool stuff. We have a good time, and we have amazing people come speak, like today. Also, just curious, who here heard about this online? I'm just curious, on Facebook or online? Yeah, quite a few. Thank you. That's very, very useful. So before we get going, I just want to talk about some of the up-and-coming programs that we have. We're really excited this Saturday, so I'd like to encourage everybody to bring their kids and grandkids. We're having Monsters at the Museum on Saturday. It starts at 10 o'clock. It's sort of our Halloween bash. We're very excited about this. There will be a costume contest. I'm one of the judges, so don't anybody attempt to bribe me. Just putting that out early. We also are going to have a tour of the building here, the Customs House tour. That's going to be at 2 o'clock on Friday, November 3rd, which we're really excited to be a part of. And we're also going to be doing a Cherokee genealogy at noon on Monday on November the 6th. So if you're interested in genealogy and you maybe have Cherokee heritage, we would welcome you to come to that. Lots of people will be attending. We're very excited. And then on November 9th, Bill Carey is going to come talk about his book, A Colossal Change, which is about Tennessee in the early 1800s. So that's going to be another brown bag that we have coming up. I'd like to encourage everyone to attend. And so now I'm going to do the introduction for our speaker, and I feel like truly he is a speaker who needs no introduction. So this is difficult. So let me say this about it. I'm not going to list all of his accolades. We all know Bill, or some version of Bill. But let me tell you this. Some version of Bill. I grew up in Granger County in East Tennessee. And I grew up, like many of us, watching Bill on the Heartland Series. And Bill is honestly one of the reasons I wanted to get into history and local history. So in many ways, this is Bill's a mentor of mine. He's told stories. He's a storyteller. He's got knowledge that's incredible. He's gone back into the deepest of hollers, I can assure you, as we've all seen. And we know the work that he's done to promote the history of East Tennessee and to be a part of East Tennessee. So it is so special that we have Bill Landry here talking about his latest book, The Last Hurrah, which I think we were discussing. The sequel will probably be called The Last Hurrah Part 2. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Bill Landry. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Bill, thank you. Thank you all for coming. And it's so good to see so many people that worked on it. Just think about it a second. We did 2,000 shows and 50 people helped on each show. That's just the staff. You know, I mean, we don't have a staff. We got 3 people, but we had 5 at one time. And we, but imagine, you know, how many people have helped on these shows, and that's why I guess it's so dear to many, many people. And it's just wonderful to get to, you know, just think about what I got to eat. I mean, we had turtle. I don't think I ate a bird. I know William Bartram, you know, the great flower hunter, the pilot show for the Heartland Series. He said the best thing he ever ate was a whooping crane. And so we don't know what that tastes like. And they better not catch you eating it either. So. But, you know, I like to start off with, we can talk about anything you want. We're going to have at least 20 minutes at the end for questions, and we'll get into whatever you want to get into, because there's a lot of things happened in East Tennessee, of course, like the rest of the world. And it's been our great pleasure to get to figure out how they happened and what it took and all that. We spent a lot of time in language, and we were just talking about language that I was able to introduce people. And I was just thinking about my English teacher John Tinkler was a linguist, and he got me through my English finals at the University of Chattanooga, and we in finishing to graduate with an English degree, I had to pass these comprehensive exams. And at the same time, we had a big riot in Chattanooga where the Heartland, they weren't the Heartland people, the Harlequin Players, a theater group I was in, we were doing plays around the city all summer for 2 years. And the second year, we happened to go to Alton Park, which is the foot of Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, and it's the ghetto, there's the projects, and that's what we did all summer, is do plays for children. And it just happened to be that was the same day that this Black Panther group was meeting there, and they didn't want us there. We wanted to leave, but our director and their director didn't want us to leave, and we went ahead and started the play, but we didn't get but about 5 minutes into it when all hell broke loose. All the men were put in the hospital. We broke up all our set. That was the Harlequin riot. So that was one of my lives. Warren talked about 9 lives of Bill Landry, maybe. I was talking about the things I was fortunate to get to do. And so there you go. I like to start out by just, telling people what happened when the East Tennessee boy went to Vanderbilt, got a scholarship. And he's walking across the campus, looking around, and he sees this fellow in a tweed coat smoking a pipe. And he says, "Hey, I'm from East Tennessee. You know where the admissions office is at?" And the fellow grabbed the pipe and he took his pipe out and said, "Son, I don't know where you're from, but this is Vanderbilt University. Around here, we don't end our sentences in prepositions." So a kid from East Tennessee says, "Well, you know where the admissions office is at, asshole?" See, that's an East Tennessee story. I got to tell that joke in Vanderbilt once, but they didn't laugh like you all. Here's another one. A kid gets just out of East Tennessee, just out of UT, and he's working at the Maynardville hardware store. And it's been a hot summer. And, this old fellow walks in with his overalls on, and he's got his money in his bib right here, and he's, "I need me an air conditioner." And the kid looks at this guy and says, "Well," he said, he thinks he's going to fix him. And he says, "Well," he knew he couldn't pay, so he says, "Well, how many BTUs you need, old timer?" And the guy looks at him and he says, "Well, I reckon enough to cool this BUT the size of a TUB." That's almost the same kind of joke. And we can go on. All right, in Wartburg, there used to be, when you pulled into Morgan County there, Wartburg, there used to be a great little restaurant down in the holler, and great place to eat. And in a place like that, and the guy goes in and gets directions, and there's a kid eating goober peanuts out of a gallon jug by the door. And he gets his directions, guy from Ohio probably. And he goes by there and he says, "Hey," he said, "you think that's a good idea, you eating peanuts like that?" And the little boy looked up and said, "Well," he said, "my granddaddy lived to be 95. And the fellow from Ohio said, "Well, did he eat a lot of peanuts?" And the little boy said, "No, he minded his own business." It's great what you can learn, But this is the book that I probably spent most of my life working on, probably. But I really didn't finish it until it was just in time for the pandemic. So, but anyway, irrepressible cussedness. That was one of my favorite sayings. It's just a little thing I found years ago in working on the riverboat for TVA about the folklore book, Bodkin, Southern Treasury of Southern Folklore. Said all the time there he was, playing his tricks of making a way out of no way, of hitting a straight lick with a crooked stick, winning the jackpot with no other stake but a laugh, fighting a mighty battle without outside showing force and winning his war from within. Irrepressible cussedness. It's a trait we most admire in ourselves and in our people. All the time, there he was, we most admire. It's what elevates a poor East Tennessee farm boy to frontier folk hero. It's what elevates a farmer to frontiersman, to restless warrior and wide-eyed wanderer who grew up to become king of the wild frontier. Irrepressible cussedness. And this book is 7 chapters, and it worked out where chapter 1 is the Wilderness Road and Bean Station and settlement. And the period that's always fascinated me was 1790, just before statehood, because, the territory south of the River Ohio, that's what we are, Tennessee. But it wasn't called Tennessee, it was the Tennessee country. And they don't even know that the word Tennessee there's no historical there's no other proof of where it came from except for the 12 or 14 Cherokee villages along the Little T, Toqua, Tomotley, Tanassi. So Tanassi is about as close as the historians can get in the origin of Tennessee. But so the first 2 adventures into this wilderness from the top of the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River was that strange strip of land south of the River Ohio, Cherokee country. That was it. It was Cherokee country, and you didn't last long in here much, particularly early, but it was this place. And the other thing we learned early doing the Heartland series, that's probably the most important thing you learn about doing what we learned, is this. Tennessee is blessed with an abundance of fresh flowing water. And you don't think about that, but not like any place in the world. Of course, the Appalachian Mountains and the Appalachian River was the original, what they called the Tennessee. So you got all those rivers draining the western side of the Appalachians, the Holston and the Powell and the French Broad and the Clinch, and they all come together before Knoxville. Then you got Hiawassee. Yikes. And it's all joined into the main channel by the time it gets to Chattanooga. When I was growing up, it's flooded they flooded every year. Every year we'd have big floods. But so what I'm getting to is that if you go out west or think about the great adventure of, sanctioned by Andrew, Vice President, you're going west, you go through, I forgot what I was talking about here, the Tennessee, the settlement period. Timberlake's journey. It's not, what is it? What was that great voyage of out west that was sanctioned by Lewis and Clark? The Lewis and Clark expedition has nothing on us. We have the journey of Lieutenant Henry Timberlake, and even at least as important is the travels of William Bartram. In 1773, he wrote about it. He wrote about this place from the top of the mountain. He didn't make it here. He just saw it from a little bit in North Carolina, which we have been fortunate to get to go to. And anyway, so those are the 2. So in 1760, Bartram Bartram came through in 1773 and wrote about it in his travels. Henry Timberlake came through here in 1760 because he was trying to sell a treaty with the Cherokee. The Cherokee, after they got kicked out of Fort Loudon, needed a friend on the frontier. This is 1760, 1770. Well, the Shawnee had joined with the French in the north, and the British were partners with the Cherokee at, Fort Loudon down there. Fort Loudon and down in the Little T, and they desperately needed a partner. So we have those two great adventures, the great adventures of discovery. The first trip into this region were documented. And we tried for about 5 hard years to try to do a film on Henry Timberlake's journey because of what happened to him. And it's just unbelievable. Great story, but it's too big to get into alone here. But that's in this book. We did a cutting of Timberlake's journey in Bartram's travels is in this book, along with the big chapter on the Tennessee River, which I was fortunate to get to experience as a riverboat captain for TVA for 2 years, and that was my job. So I had to learn about it, and it just turned out that I got to meet one of the great old pilots on the old river who navigated the river before the dams, Captain Tommy Utter, who lived below Watts Bar Dam, and he piloted those boats. He said one time, Christmas of 1939, they were bringing up the gates to Watts Bar Dam on a little towboat. He said back then, people moved. There weren't any buses and train. You got on a riverboat and you moved down the river or up the river or moved your goods. If a man had hogs or chickens, he put them on the boat. And just drove their wagon on the boat, and then people were on the top floor. It was a packet boat. People were on the top floor, and the goods and gear and stuff like that was on the bottom. Tommy Utter said, we just moved. Daddy just drove the wagon onto the boat, and we went up the river, got off, and drove the wagon to the house. That's how we moved. But he said, and he knew all about Muscle Shoals, and all rivers got trouble, but Tennessee had more than its share. The Narrows below Chattanooga, where all that water just gushes through those big mountains, and then in northern Alabama. And Muscle Shoals was the real trouble. Before the TVA locks, there was 17 locks you had to go through to get from Pickwick, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, to Chattanooga. I won't do that anymore. And in Chattanooga, but anyway, that's the great adventure of prior to, there was a different world without the dams. And that's part of this. But I wanted to read for you. Here's in honor of the war. Every time I come around Tennessee, there's another war. But this is part of the new book. This is called T for Old Soldier. This book has four books. It's behind the scenes of the Heartland Series. Behind the scenes of the Heartland Series at five episodes. And so I told you what all the secrets are in the first 5 episodes. And then there's a series of poems in this book. And there's a lot of short stories, and there's some theatrical plays, Einstein the Man, which I'll get into in a minute. But it starts off with this little poem. It's called T for Old Soldier. A pistol in the eye, a nightcap by and by. But the time that I recall is the night we won it all, that blessed, wretched night where Johnny lay. We took the hill at Roanoke, then fanned the flames just north of Biggio. The toothless jackals called for more, front and center. Soon dark and grieving, they were buried in shallow graves. All night long it boomed and raged, little fires flickering light like the lightning bugs on a summer's eve. Explosions of death is what they were. Bodies blown skyward, scattering parts like poppies in Flanders fields or bloody Omaha, at Verdun or Quezon on the Day of Days. Screaming soldiers attack. They kill and they die. That's what soldiers do. A crumpet for you? Well, that's the end of that one. But I like that poem. Here's a short thing we did. I did this poem. This book has. I was offered the opportunity to do 200-word stories of Anderson County and Clinton, and I worked on that a pretty long time. But like Channel 10, when we do a 30-second spot or a commercial, I digress. Let me tell you this quick story. After we were doing the Heartland Series for a couple, 4 years, none of us, our parents and our families of origin, knew exactly what we were doing up here. So we all took, Sean Kirk, Linda Billman, me, the people that worked on the show, took our favorite first 4 shows out of the first 100 maybe, when we were just getting started, and we stuck them on a tape and went home and showed our families. And I remember taking mine to Chattanooga, and my daddy, we had 9 brothers and sisters, and he worked and plugged around all his life. And it was a big deal to sit down and show the shows. So my brothers and sisters had a chair and a little drink for me, and they put something on my neck, like a towel or something. And I sat down there, and when we first started, it was always, "Hi, I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland Series. And today we're going to be at the East Tennessee History Center. And 5 minutes later, I'm still Bill Landry, and this is still the Heartland Series." And we did that because they told me to do that because people needed to know what the name of the show was and who I was and what we were doing here. So that's why you had them all. First 5 years, they were always, "I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland Series." So anyway, so that Christmas we're sitting there, and after I was looking at, a Herb Trenum show and the Maynard Ledbetter story, my daddy's watching these shows, and finally, after Wiley Oakley's Cow Barn aired, finally, see how he liked the shows or not, and finally he stood up and said, "Jesus, we know who you are." And I like to tell that because people, what the hell, why do they keep doing that? Why are they running all the name in there? Well, and that's the reason. But it was like the other thing was we always were worried about Ohio. It seemed like every time we got in trouble, we were connected with people who just didn't understand the world as we know it. Is anybody here from Ohio? Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. What happened was we always had to do that. I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland Series, and today we're going to climb Mount LeConte or something, whatever you got to do that the day we did the show. So you come home and you got three tapes, and you give the three tapes to the editor, and it's got all the stuff we need for the show. We move on to the next show. The editors begin working on this show. That's kind of how we do it. So, we were up there on the top of Mount LeConte. Well, we were in Clingman's Dome. So we do a show about Cage Cove. We drive all the way through the park to go to Clingman's Dome. So you got the mountains behind us. "Hi, I'm Bill Landry, and there's mountains behind me there. See?" And whatever I said, you listen to because I got such a pretty picture going. That's the idea, anyway. Sort of. So we're up there, and it's dark. The camera's out of tape. We got no batteries left. The sun is going down. And we're at Morton Overlook at Clingman's Dome. And they're giving me words to say. I got to learn. Those words aren't good. You got to learn these words. So I'm standing there, and cars are going, put us on TV, people, traffic going by. So this guy pulls in from Ohio. Doug's got the camera there, and I'm over here. Morton's Overlook with the mountains behind. And this guy pulls in a white Cadillac. He gets out. He's got black glasses, big black glasses. He had striped shorts and polka dotted shirt. And he gets out. We're here, the cameras, people. Is this the road to Gattlesburg? That's what he said. Is this the road to Gattlesburg? Yeah, go on down the hill, go straight ahead, get out of here, And he was from Ohio. And we just learned that people from other places, we always thought everything north of here was Ohio. Kind of works that way because, without any batteries, you're driving through the park and the guy in front of you is doing, there's a tree over there. That's another tree, He's from Ohio. And one time we were in Cage Cove, and whenever we saw like a snake on a rock or a mountain lion or something, we would try bears. Doug shot all his bears and red wolf footage, himself. And he, usually we just ran into a bear jam and we'd get out and take the picture. So we're out there, this was near the end of the run of the Heartland Series. So that had been about 207 or somewhere. And Doug's heard this for 25 years. And the guy, he's shooting the bear. Bear's over there. And this guy comes from Ohio, comes up and says, hey, what you doing? Now, he really means, what are you going to do with the video? But he said, what you doing? Now, Doug's heard that 400 times in 20 years. What you doing? The camera says the Heartland Series, WBIR-TV, so, he couldn't know that. So Doug, who never says anything, just said, well, it's 2 o'clock, isn't it? And the guy said, yeah. He said, well, that's when the ranger said they're going to feed the bears at 2 o'clock. Oh! Or they'll say, I was with Kim Delosier wildlife guy, and people come up to him and said, how many deers you got? Pardon me? How many deers are there in the national park, huh? How many deers you got? Well, we've got a lot of deer, Kim would say. He said, well, or one time he was in Cataloochee, and a guy come up to him, and they're looking at the elk. And the people are saying, one guy said, hey, what's it cost to ride one of them elks? Delosier said, you can't ride that, buddy. That's a national park. This is a game preserve. I'll give you $10 to ride that elk. He wanted to ride that elk, And people would say stuff like that, and that's the truth. So you don't have to really go far for fiction. And that's another thing I wanted to mention real quick, is that fiction, this is part of the beginning of this book. And I truly hope that these sojourns about the life I have lived will take away some positive perceptions and opportunities to enjoy life. A good portion of my journey has all been fun and productive. But surprisingly, it's difficult to know which part. It's like trying to tell the difference between nonfiction and fiction, or fact from fantasy. It's hard to know the difference even when it's staring you dead in the eye. And that's a line from Jim Dykes I like to use. But anyway, Thelma Mathis said, I hope you'll find something useful here to help you along on your life's journey. Thelma said this, she said, to get it right, you try telling the whole truth. It's only then you best remember what your journey is all about. And I like that. Thelma starts this book with the story about witches. Dit Rose wanted to be a witch. She didn't want to be one part way. She wanted to be one of them. And that's the way that story starts. But I'm trying to get you this. Here's the offering. I was going to tell you these are 200-word stories. Here's one about the tooth dentist. Just like television, you have the limits. It's not like making a film where you can do 3.5 hours or something. We got 3 minutes and 40 seconds to the second. So this is 200 words. It was difficult to find a dentist in Tennessee until nearly World War II. There just weren't many tooth dentists, as they were sometimes called. Local folks were forced to go to a barber shop or a feed store for help. Someplace where there was a tool and somebody who could use it. The suffering patient might have to sit on a barrel and wait. When the owner finally get a minute, he might grab a pair of pliers or a farrier's tool, and he'd pull the tooth for you. When the screaming and bleeding stopped and the blood-curdling pain subsided a bit, he might say, "Grab a handful of salt out of that barrel you're sitting on and stick it in your mouth. Bye." Or if you prefer not to fuss with it, you could choose to go ahead and jump the tooth yourself. To do it, you take a hammer and a cut nail or a square one and carefully force the nail in between the infected tooth and your gum. Oh, yeah. Okay, now you're ready. Using the hammer, give the nail a good hard whack. Don't miss the cut nail and hit your face. If you do, it'll feel like you just stuck your head in a bee's hive. I like that. Now here's this one is about the peewee bird, and I have to give credit to Bert Vincent and Catherine Baker Hoskins, great writers from way back, our predecessors. But he wrote about this too. But this is a story that I'll give credit to Bert Vincent on. The peewee bird. Jap Bolin was an officer in a mine Frank Naramore found. "Let's open her up," Jap said as they selected a ledge under which the mine would be opened. So one fine spring day, Jap and Frank and Rule Stout and some other workers went up in the mountains to blast open the mine. On that perfect spot, the ledge sat a peewee bird singing his heart out, singing the only song the peewee bird knows. Moving closer, the men could see the nest. Stepping back, Jack Bolin said, "If a man disturbs that nest, I'll break a pick handle over his head." Jap said, "We'll not make the first opening here. We'll change it to over there. We're away from the nest." Like the lumber business, digging coal is a dangerous way to make a living. Both industries helped develop the area. These jobs required strong, rough, and tumble types. But these rough men had a softer side, too. Respecting nature, even the little peewee bird reflects the honor that's shared for nature's bounty. It wasn't long until the black gold was being shipped all across the entire United States. The successful company was named the Pee-wee Coal Company. So that was Bert's work. But one more. When the government asked, this one's called the Offering of Anderson County. When the government asks, Anderson County responds. During the late 1930s, mysterious things began occurring. Suddenly, entire extended families started packing up and moving out, leaving all their homes. "I'm from the government. I'm here to help you," the strangers said. There were whispers, too, rumors of dams and secret flooding. People wondered if it wasn't some kind of Old Testament wrath or retribution or something. Entire families, generations of folks struggling, working the land, stopped, just quit. Then gray-coated government men appeared, telling farmers to leave. They said, "Your government needs your land. Just leave your crops and get out." Entire families had to do that. The Clinch River was backing up and flooding everything. Many moved to familiar communities locally, like Wheat and Scarborough. Then for a second time in a decade, they came again. It was the Clinton Engineering Works this time. Again, secretly buying up 52,000 acres of land. They wouldn't say why or couldn't. For the second time, many citizens were forced to leave their homes and move away from everything they knew. This is the offering of Anderson County. To give up everything you own, everything you have except your memories, then in aspiring for the greater good, be forced to do it again. It's not pretty, but pretty true. One more I wanted to do. John Hendricks. There's a, if I can find it. Yeah. Pearl, the pearl industry. From 1895 to 1936, Anderson County caught pearl fever. Many families augmented their incomes trading pearls. Believe it or not, during this period, Clinton became a top freshwater pearl market in the world. By 1900, Clinton had good reason to be optimistic. It had a bank, school system, courthouse, library, and newspaper. The population had grown to 1,200 citywide and 17,000 in the county. One reason was the pearl industry. It's been said when pearl fever hits, only finding a pearl can put the fire out. Each May through September, hundreds of john boats and pearling dredgers clogged the rivers, jockeying for space and mussel shells and button boats. The camping and hunting attracted fun-loving, adventurous folk. Business boomed on Saturday mornings when buyers from New York arrived by train and raced up and down the riverbank in buggies buying pearls. It was like a gold rush. The Clinch River was one of the richest pearl resources in North America. A quality gem at the time brought $5,000 when $100 was 3 months' pay. The mussel shells were sold to manufacturers for buttons, and all were cut, dyed, and processed right here in Clinton. When Norris Dam was built, many pearl mussel species disappeared, along with the pearl and button businesses. But it's an interesting how things come and go. During that same period, early in this century, well, 19th century, 50 to 60 trains a day went through Clinton. And that's just kind of a little kind of wondering thing. Okay, here's one. Well, what time is it? Does anybody know? 22, we got 5. I'm going to read this, the last one I'm going to read you. And then we'll take questions. But this is kind of like the end of the book, but it's not. All right, this would be about 4 minutes, I think. Take out the garbage, she said. It was a simple task, a common chore around the old household. Wait, a problem. Ours isn't one of those standard waist-high aluminum jobs, you know, those short silver garbage cans with handles on the lids we used to play with as kids. I'm not talking about those old garbage cans. There's millions of those. Folks don't use them anymore. I'm describing what happens to a homeowner, me, when I squared off against one of those giant, newfangled, burly Robbie the Robot garbage cans. They're the big green brutes with wheels, standing almost 6.5 feet tall. You roll it, if you're like me. It's the only way you can move it, of course. You certainly can't lift it. You push it, roll the damn thing down to the road, and these babies are not light, but they do roll, so I thought I was okay. Our garbage can man, the actual collector of the garbage, comes on Thursday, which is pickup day. This being Friday, it was starting to stink. So I thought I'd clean it, hose down the big green monster with soap and water, a nice gesture worthy of kudos from the boss. Now you might think these new cans being made of plastic would give a little, you know. Bend, say, if you fell on them or something. Come on, being plastic, you'd think they'd be flexible, right? No, they will not give even a little bit. Damn solid, hard as a rock. In fact, I can say with complete confidence and field experience, they are superhuman hard. They may even be alive. And if you're not careful, it'll whip your ass like it did mine. Trying to sneak up on it, I approached the thing from behind, grabbing the lid and swung it open. Friggin' huge it was. I thought I'd start at the top and clean my way down, hosing and washing as I go. The lid was more like a door on top or a roof. quickly, the big thing tipped over, crashed, and was on its side before I could say Jack Robinson. Somehow the damn thing tripped me, and I started fumbling and stumbling and bumbling around. This is just about the time when my wife showed up. Oh, geez. I could see her watching the show, peeping out through the curtains in the dining room. Oh, great. That's just great. Bang! That was the sound the lid made, crashing into the side of the can. When the monster fell over, it knocked me over with it. Ass over tea kettle, as my dear old daddy used to say. Spun me around and I landed on my side, slamming up against the edge of the can. Yow! I couldn't breathe. It knocked the air out of me. I almost fell inside the can. Water and bubbles running everywhere, but I still had my soap in one hand and the hose in the other ablazing. If some sports announcer was around like Howard Cosell or another, they would have hollered out, "Down goes Fraser! Down goes Fraser!" I didn't set out to have a boxing match with a garbage can, but that's what happened. When I fell and hit the open edge of the can, I think I broke my clavicle. I was upside down now. The can tripped me, okay? The edge was supposed to be made of plastic. Damn it. It hit my chest about 4 inches up from where you put your hand over your heart when you're doing the Pledge of Allegiance, right there. It crushed the upper portion of my chest cavity. If there had been ribs there, I would have broken 4. Oh yeah, sure, the can is made of plastic. So is the Great Wall of China. It felt like a knife being driven by a sledgehammer. I'll bet that's what it feels like if you get shanked in prison. It's when I started seeing little bitty floaty things and hear the announcer screaming, "Down goes Fraser! Down goes..." My wife heard the commotion. She couldn't help but hear me screaming. Ah! She probably thought I'd been hit by a beer truck. When I came to my senses, she was standing there laughing. I wasn't. My arm was in a sling for a week. A big punk knot swole up and stuck out where my cracked clavicle was. Sadly, I gave up any idea of washing anything. Instead, I limped back to the couch, having learned my lesson, which is, if you get any ideas about doing anything brave or foolhardy, think again. Be sure you're right and then go ahead, is what, like Davy Crockett said. I say, unless your wife yells out, "Down goes Fraser! Down goes Fraser!" don't get into a scrap with a 7-foot garbage can you can't beat. Just go back to your couch where you belong. Thank you. Okay. I got a lot of other stuff, but maybe we could do some questions. If anybody wants to know anything about any of those places or shows, yes, sir.
Bill, where'd you grow up?
Chattanooga. I was born in White Plains, New York. My daddy, there was 5 of us then, and my grandfather was in the wool business, and he hired all the children, my uncles, and then when the synthetics came in about 1956, 58, they sold the mill and then everybody scattered. So I got cousins in a lot of places, but all the Landry children first went to Miami, Florida for 2 years, and then we ended up in Chattanooga. So I went to the 2nd grade all the way up in Chattanooga. And there's a couple of stories in this book about my brothers and growing up, and maybe the one story is titled "The Year Billy Spoiled Christmas." It's a confession, yes. But anyway, I went to UTC in Chattanooga, and then went to graduate school in Dallas, Texas, at the Dallas Theater Center, part of Trinity University out of San Antonio. So that was. I had 5 brothers. There's 2 of us left. But so I got a lot of kin in Chattanooga. Yes, sir.
What are some of your favorite shows or memories?
Well, I guess that's why I write these books. But Boy, there's a lot of great ones. Depends on, well, Swift's, here's my favorite stories of all times. You probably never heard of them. Jonathan Swift's Lost Silver Mine. That's a great story. That'd be a great film. The Journey of Lieutenant Henry Timberlake. It's incredible. You know, Fort Sumter? You ever heard of Fort Sumter? You know who Sumter is? You know who the guy Sumter was? He was the guy who went with Timberlake. So here's what happened in 1760-ish or so, 1759. There was a big treaty at Kingsport, up the river, and 400 Cherokee chiefs from all around the state, and particularly the Little T, came all the way up there to meet with the Virginia British contingent, the British Army. And they wanted to do this treaty with the Cherokee and get back to having Cherokees be their partner in the frontier so England would get a piece of the action, probably. And what happened was they made this treaty after 3 days, and Lieutenant Henry Timberlake was a scribe. He was the guy taking notes. And after 3 days of arguing, they said, all right, we got to take this treaty now. We're going to go down to the Little T, go down the Tennessee River, past where Knoxville will be one day, and go on down all the way to Fort Loudon Dam, hang a left, go up the Little T toward, North Carolina. Okay, who's going to go? Which one of our generals is going to go down there and sell this treaty to the Cherokee? I ain't going. I'm not going down there. And so the guy, Timberlake's 27 years old. He's never been anywhere. He says, I'll go. And he turns to the guy, where am I going? Where? And he did. So he went down there. And he sold the treaty to all those villages. There's 13, 14 villages. And he went one village to the other and wrote a book. He wrote his memoirs. And just incredible what happened. So he goes back, he comes back. Then it's a year, not long, three chiefs show up, and they come to see Timberlake in Virginia, and the whites are encroaching on America, on their land, and we got to get them out of there, so we're going to go see the king. The chiefs wanted to go see the king in England, King George. You can't go to England. Yeah, okay, well, he did. The people in England charged 10 cents to see those Indians at these big events, and it just went to hell. The chief one guy got the translator that got drunk, got thrown in a creek and got frozen, got pneumonia and died. So one of the Indian chiefs died. It didn't go well, and Timberlake came back, and he paid for it. And he paid for his trip, and he was broke. And Timberlake wrote that book and was dead by the time he was 31. Plus, he spent time in prison, too.
What are your hobbies now?
Fishing and moving. I move a lot. We thought we were going to have a nice little place by the beach, not by about a mile away, but we had a Hurricane Ian, dropped 3.5 feet of water in our living room. So, and the whole rest of the little house we had. So we moved 4 times in the last year, and hopefully we're settled. Maybe we won't have to move some more.
How did you transition from river captain, riverboat to Heartland?
Good question. Well, I did 2 years with Einstein. Well, a year to write it and 2 years doing the play. I traveled to 38 states and Canada twice doing this play. And it was produced and operated by the Oak Ridge people. At that time, they were the Oak Ridge people. They were the Museum of Science and Energy, Museum of Atomic Energy. That's who it was. And the Museum of Atomic Energy sponsored me, and I'd go to the colleges and high schools all over the place and do 2 shows a day if we could, or 1. And another guy went with me the second year, and we did 10 shows a week for 2 years almost. And that's enough traveling to know that you don't want to do that all the time. And all the time toward the end of that run, I would check in with Channel 10 to see if, they were the big station in the market, if there was a place for me, or I could maybe do something for television or read copy, or, what are you going to do with an actor on television? Well, you got to find something for him to act, I guess. But anyway, Court Randall and Steve Dean at Channel 10 was looking. Jim Hart wanted to do something to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This was 1982, after the fair. The Heartland Series started in March. In 1983, we went on the air in 1984, and that was our first year. And this book has a little bit on it, but I had a 3-month contract to do these pilot shows about William Bartram and Lucinda Ogle. And after 3 months, they hired me for the year. And then sort of like Tommy Lasorda, I got a year's contract every year for about 10 years. And then I got a little longer contract. But I started for 3 months, and I ended up for 25 years being there. So was that answer your question? Yes, sir.
When was the last time you've done Einstein?
About 2:05. Okay, here we go.
You did a little of Arrow.
Yeah. Ah, yes, my little friend, and I am an old student too. That's the way he starts. Remember to seek to know the beauty of a thing for yourself as a joy, not as a duty. Thank you for returning my Euclid to me. Good luck. I was a rather precocious young man, he'd say. I knew most vividly the futile hopes and aspirations most men pursue throughout their lives. I understand this from school, where we go to be taught the peace and nothing more. That is why to my teachers I was Herr Langweil, they say. Mr. Dollnoggin. That is all right, because to me they were sergeants. Ha! It would be nice if you could leave us, Herr Einstein. I say, yeah, it'd be nice for me too. See, as a pupil, I was neither particularly good nor bad. It's just that I could see that this whole system of education is based upon the deliberate intention of the state to mislead youth. My principal weakness was a poor memory for words and tests. Tests. If they were eliminated, they would carry with them this painful drilling of the memory, the constant hammering for years. What will be entirely forgotten in a few weeks. And it deserves to be forgotten. They taught me much unnecessary baggage, little of which ever served me. They crammed my head with dates and more dates, nothing that made any impression upon activities in ordinary life. After I passed my final examination at Zurich, I find that my equations were distasteful for me for an entire year. Then he goes on to play the violin a little bit. I learned how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Einstein was a very good violinist, like Mozart kind of. But I got where, by the time I got it tuned, so you're going to, I apologize. I go to a different place every day to do a play, and then I forgot what I was going to say there. But it must not have been important. Just keep moving, keep them moving. They used to say, don't make yourself a good target.
Is there a place to watch the old Heartland series?
Channel 10.
Yeah.
I mean, they still run them, and you can get them. I think they have them here. I'm not sure. Do you have Einstein? I mean,
I actually have some DVDs. I'm not sure how many.
yeah, they don't have Channel 10's got the whole, but I'm not sure you can get to them if they don't air them. Yes.
Did you teach at Marshtown East for a year?
Yeah, between graduate school years, and coached swimming and football. And we had a pretty good football team.
Some of your Halloween and April Fools series, I think, were some of the most captivating.
Yeah.
Favorite among those.
Oh yeah, that April Fools. Once we started that, you'd think people, people that watch TV are different.
Ohio.
Yeah, a lot of Ohio people. But let's see. So, do you remember the Superman comic books? Do you remember the night of March 31st? What do you think that is? The night of March 31st. I remember that. I was 10. It was the night the Bizarro world took over. And it was April 1st. So they killed off Santa Claus. Santa Claus. That's another story. They killed off, who's I talking about? Superman. They killed off Superman. And then the next week he shows back up because kryptonite wasn't really real because that was an April Fool's show. And I remembered that, and we were sitting around wondering what the hell are we going to do next week. And it was March, and people were planting. Everything had its time. I heard it a million times, and it's true. You can't shoot a corn show in February, and that was part of the rhythm of the Heartland series. So to answer your question, that's how the idea, but what are we going to do? Well, at that time, Charlie Faulkner and Dr. Chapman were showing us the archaeology of the region and the things that the archaeologists, the digs and everything. So we was supposing, Steve had a piece of film where somebody's paddling a canoe real fast, and they pull a skier up. And they got in front of the UT football field, it's by the river. And you see the stadium, and they're pulling, and we'd use that to tell that. So that's how the idea of a significant find came about. Because the scientists are always saying, I say, how old is that, Dr. Chapman? And he'll say, Bill, we'll have to carbon date that. We'll just have to take that back to the studio, carbon date it. Well, what the hell's carbon dated? He just says a number. So we took out a piece of carbon paper, and at the end of the show, we had a couple of strings. Archaeologists want to go out there with a broom or a little toothbrush and do this kind of thing. This is television. You got to see something. We need a bone, a skull. You can't just do this kind of thing. So we use backhoes and stuff like that. But anyway, so we had this little trench dug, and strings across it, and he was from Eastern Ohio State University. The scientist, we got to go back to Ohio. And we started, and people believe that. And then we did, we do that for 10 years. You think, okay, March is here. We got to do a Heartland. We got to do a lie, tell a story. People were just getting where they believed us, because we always would go to the authorities for these scientific stuff.
The electric trees is about.
That's the one. So we got this idea about, supposing you take, all right, Steve Dean always played the scientist. And his name was Dr. A.C. Watt. Dr. Watt, what did you think of when you first found out about producing energy from trees? He said, well, frankly, Bill, we were shocked. And you should know then, that's a little hint. And then we had a plug in the tree, but if you start off the show with the Norris Dam behind you, and we're out there, and he's got two baked potatoes, and he's got a little diode stuck in there. Supposing you could harness the energy of a tree. Da-da-da-da. There's the show. So we're doing that, set it up in front of North Dam, where your diodes can produce enough electricity to turn this digital clock. Well, supposing you could harness the electricity of a tree. So we put a plug in the tree and blew a guy's hat off. And at the end, they all laughed at the horseless carriage. But someday soon, you might be able to take a bonsai tree to the national park, make your coffee and watch your television all at the same time. And boy, that phone started ringing. We didn't put Happy April Fools on that show. And dang, man, that phone rang all week. And you got people call and say, boy, I'm glad to hear about that electric trees, but my backyard's full of trees. He thought he was in high cotton. And we got a phone call from the deputy assistant manager at Los Angeles Power and Light Company. How did you hear about that electric tree business? And he said, well, somebody had a kinfolk from Maryville and called and said, you better get on this. You might miss the boat on this one. So that phone rang all week, man. We never forgot to put Happy April Fools on it after that. But, Sean Kirk was the early writer, Laura Armour. And then Linda Billman was terrific during the 90s when we were getting recognized for doing some stuff. That Linda was doing a lot of that work. Linda Billman.
Any scars left from reaching in the hole catching fish?
You ever do that?
No. I watched you do it.
Yeah. So we call up as George Moses from down near Sweetwater, and he said, "Oh, well, we'll take you out there." He said, "Just call me back when it gets hot." So I called him in June. He said, "Call me back after the 4th of July." Called him back. He said, "We're going Thursday." And now that's the whole thing about these people that do this for serious kind of thing. When they've learned, and there's no fooling around. I mean, there's yes or no. It's going to happen or not, or Anyway, so we meet them. We go out there, and so we put a $1,000 microphone on these guys on the way out in the boats, and they're dressed like us. They're blue jeans and tennis shoes on. We get to where the edges, sharp, deep crevices on the side of the banks around Watts Bar, particularly Watts Bar Lake. There's crevices there, and around the 10th of July, these big catfish will back up into a hole and look for a date. Spawning time in Tennessee. And they're in there, and all you got to do is stick your hand in that hole, and catfish, they don't have like fangs, or they have little tiny cilia. So they take their food and they don't chew it, they just push it down. So if you stick your hand in their mouth and don't pull out, it doesn't hurt. They got scrapes and stuff. Try that. Boy, it's a thrill. I said, I can block, but I blocked that hole, but I put my hand down in there in one of those holes, and you know how a football is shaped like a pigskin, a football. So I felt that big spine on the back of the catfish, great big poisonous thing, get you. Anyway, but when you go out, I could feel, I was looking for the curve. There was no curve. Oh, no. You know how scary that is? That there's a fish down there that you're going to stick your hand in his mouth, and he's this wide. He's got to be this wide. I mean, that's why I didn't put my hand in that fish's mouth. That was a big fish. But anyway, so we got 3 of them in an hour. And they took us back. We had these great big fish, and it was pretty much a thrill. And they said, "Hey, Bill, a couple of weeks, we're going to go get some snapping turtles. You want to go?" And I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, what happens if you stick your hand in a hole, for snapping, and there's a snake in there?" He said, "Oh, Bill, we leave them. We don't eat them." I mean, you remember you've been to a farm somewhere in the back 40 in the woods where nobody's ever gone in the last 20 years, and blueberries and huckleberries are hanging over, and that's where we went to do this. Went in those places like that, and we didn't get hurt or anything, but scary, a little scary. Yes, sir.
A few years ago, we were riding down Gay Street. I says, Bill, you're the only man I've ever been jealous of.
Ever what?
And the car almost stops, and he's puzzling. And I said, you got the job I always wanted. And he looks at me and he says, you know, I think you could have done that. Well, as you all have just witnessed, I ain't full of it enough to do that.
I think I should thank you, but I don't know if I will. No, we did a show here, didn't we? Yeah, Buford did put that cabin together with the real human hair they used in the mortar, for the mortar mix. Anyway, okay. Well, I'll just leave you what Herb Trenum always said. He said, while ago's done gone. You ain't got no promise of it directly. All you got's right now don't spile this day. So thanks for coming out, and give my best wishes to all the folks that I missed, and I do miss them. So we'll see you on the tube. Thank you. I want to introduce my partner in crime here. It's the RB Summit. Give him a big hand.
Morristown at the Mountain Macon this weekend. And then next weekend you all have the big the 57th annual craft field, fine art, up at the Knoxville Expo. We'll be up there then too. In the meantime, he's going to circle around Jamestown and Rugby and Princess Theater and Airman. He'll be here a little while, but we've got books. His most recent book, Last Hurrah, where he tells a lot of those stories that you maybe couldn't tell on TV. Even if you can't get one today, Lisa Oakley and them, Tim, they sell books in this book and When the West Was Tennessee, which is still fascinating to me, and I grew up in Sevier County. So that, like Bill said, to lead off his performance, he wished he'd had this book when they started the Heartland Series, because a lot of it wasn't known or in print at least until they did this in the Heartland Series. But thank you all, you've been a great crowd, and hang around, get to visit with Bill.
Thank you.